we are excited to host you once again this afternoon. As you join in, we encourage you to share that link with a friend and tell them that we are live at the moment and we'll be starting very, very soon. I'm very happy to see lots of participants streaming in from across board. Thank you for joining, Dr. Yav from Congo. Thank you. It's a pleasure to see you again. Ali from Ethiopia. It's a pleasure to see you again, my brothers from East Africa. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's exciting to have this session with you this afternoon. Our panelists are already in the house. They are more than ready to deliver a very action-packed session for you. So let's get share this link and make sure that our colleagues out there are not missing out a thing. Also, while you join, this session is being streamed live on YouTube, so you can ask a friend to log on using our YouTube channel, which is East Africa Law Society, and follow the proceedings. It's exciting. We're streaming live as well on Zoom that you are mostly joining on. So we welcome you, and it's an absolute honor to have you with us this afternoon. My name is Gabriel Achaye, and I have the distinct honor now of introducing our esteemed moderator for today's session, that is Mr. Philip Munabi. Mr. Munabi is the vice chairperson of the ELS Sports Law Committee. He serves the Uganda Law Society as well as the Secretary General of the Uganda Law Society. He's a sports law enthusiast and a member of our sports law faculty. It's always an honor to host him. Privately, Philip is also a partner at Diadem Advocates in Kampala and largely a transactional lawyer whose practice areas are really corporate and commercial practice, including mergers, acquisition, private equity capital markets, projects and infrastructure, and regulatory compliance. But he doesn't stop there. He handles both civil and criminal matters. And for this webinar session, he's one of the leading voices of sports law in this region and a person who has taken keenly into advancing the agenda of sports law as our chairperson of the ELS Sports Law Committee. Philip, it's an absolute honor to host you this afternoon. You have us for the next 2 hours, and it's really nice to see you and have participants. Thank you, Ali Hussein Butt, for joining us from Pakistan. Thank you for that clarification, and hope you enjoy the session. Over to you, Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Gabriel. It's a wonderful afternoon in Kampala, and thank you for allowing to put together this webinar session. Right now in Uganda, we are into an election season, and you know there is a lot of I would say idle time on the hands of the youth, who end up using the time in sports betting and related activities. I'll start off with introducing our keynote speaker, a gentleman who is so passionate about responsible gaming. I think the last session I had with him was with the USPA, Uganda Sports Press Association. They had organized an event on responsible gaming, which was largely sponsored by the National Gaming and Lotteries Board. Mr. Dennis Mudene Ngabirano is the CEO of the National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board in Uganda, who has over 10 years of leadership experience in regulatory governance, strategic operations, and innovative policy development. He has been at the NLGRB for quite a long time, and he holds or has experience in global benchmarking for excellence in the gaming industry. He holds an MBA from Amity University, India. He has a bachelor's in information technology from Makerere and several certifications in tax analysis and data privacy solutions. His keynote speech today is on advancing responsible gaming, ethical regulation, and innovations in East Africa's betting industry. This webinar brings together key players and advocates and members of the society across the region. We will have speakers from Nairobi, speakers from Dar es Salaam, who we have worked with before here, and many of whom we know by face. But for our keynote speech, I'll invite Mr. Dennis to share a word, but largely he should, or we shall request him to make us understand the gaming landscape in Uganda. On call, I see we have people from as far as Gambia. I have seen Kirill Rosenfield from Gambia, people from Pakistan, Ali Hussein. It's rather a call for investment as opposed to a mere discussion or conversation on gaming. It's a call that members who are on call right now are interested in understanding what the sports betting and gaming landscape in Uganda is. Is it worth your investment? Is it worth your time? Is it within the confines of proper gaming and betting? I will welcome Mr. Dennis, if you're on call. Please, if you're on call.
Thank you, Gabriele, and panelists, and all the advocates that have joined this webinar. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to have been invited to share what you clearly termed as a keen interest in responsible gaming. As introduced, my name is Dennis Gabrano. I serve at the National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board in Uganda as the Chief Executive Officer. And I want to thank you, Philip and team, for giving me a topic to speak about, which is the advancing responsible gaming and the ethical regulation and innovation in East Africa's betting industry. I hope my screen is visible. Phil, you can notify so I can proceed.
Yes, we can see you clearly.
Thank you so much. Like I've said, I serve at the National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board. And just to introduce who we are, the National Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board is a body corporate established under the Lotteries and CAP 334. And our major mandate is to supervise and regulate the establishment of gaming activities in Uganda. Most important, to protect the public from the adverse effects of gaming. And I thank you for choosing the topic you've chosen for me to speak about, because that is our major core focus to the Lotteries and Gaming Regulatory Board. Responsible gaming is our everyday commitment. So allow me introduce what responsible gaming is as we get into how to advance responsible gaming. Basically, responsible gaming is a set of social initiatives, principles, practices, and policies that are designed to ensure that gambling and betting activities are fair, safe, and socially sustainable. And the core principles involved in responsible gaming basically are player or punter protection, in the gaming world or the gambling world, the players are called panthers. Prevention, support, and treatment of problem gamblers. People who are addicted with gambling, we refer to them as problem gamblers. Fair and transparent operations, especially on the side of the operators. And of course, gaming operator responsibilities, responsibilities that include fair advertisements. We normally encourage them to advertise fairly, to show that gaming or betting is simply a leisure activity and not a money-making venture or a business to the players. So it is important that this is done. So advancing responsible gaming, the ethical regulation and innovation in East African betting industry. Ladies and gentlemen, the East African betting industry has grown at a remarkable pace in the past decade. And we are seeing new operators, sophisticated gaming platforms, and an expansion on consumer base. And of course, this growth in the East African community has offered undeniable economic opportunities that include tax revenue for government, jobs. In Uganda, this sector employs over 10,000 Ugandans directly, and we've seen a great investment in technology. Much as it presents opportunities, it also presents profound ethical and social responsibilities. So today, allow me explore how we can advance responsible gaming in East Africa through three interlocking priorities. That is strengthening regulatory frameworks to ensure compliance while fostering innovation, promoting responsible gaming practices that balance profitability and consumer protection, and lastly, harnessing the technology and data privacy solutions to mitigate risks and enhance transparency in our East African gaming industry. So to start with, the strengthening of regulatory frameworks, as East Africans, we have no choice but to create a harmonized policies, standards that are both firm and forward-looking to ensure that we derive what we need to derive from this industry. In East Africa, we share a lot in terms of operations. Given the operators that are in the industry, in Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, we share most of the operators. For example, in Kenya, we have Betika Kenya. In Uganda, we have Betika Uganda. It's one operator. We have BetPower Kenya, BetPower Rwanda, BetPower Uganda. So we share most operators. In Tanzania, we have Ituba, which is the national lottery operator of Tanzania, and it is the same national operator in Uganda. So we quite share a lot, and therefore we need to come together as the East African community to create harmonized policies, responsible gaming standards to ensure that it benefits our community. Definitely, we have to build capacity for regulators, for policymakers, and I am very glad that Philip and your team, you are focused on this webinar. It's one way of also building capacity for the legal fraternity that are really much needed in this gaming industry. And as the gaming board in Uganda here, capacity building is at the forefront of what we are doing, because this is a highly evolving sector that needs us to be at pace with whatever is happening. We need to focus on adaptive regulation. And here, basically, we look at approaches such as regulatory sandboxes, where we provide a safe and supervised environment to ensure that the players can test the new products in a controlled environment, especially products that are based on the disruptive technologies like blockchain and artificial intelligence. Especially we are seeing some artificial intelligence driven odd settings. So we need to provide sandboxes for these products to ensure that we supervise and we ensure ethical use of AI in our gaming industry. Through promoting responsible gaming practices, we must ensure mandatory player protection tools. Responsible gaming to me begins with a gaming operator that interfaces with the punters or the players on a daily basis. There must be mandatory use of player protection tools. Player protection tools include setting what we call deposit limits. How much money can I deposit on my betting wallet? Setting time limits. How much time can I spend on these betting sites? But also a very crucial tool called self-exclusion. We need to provide tools that will make a player or a punter decide on what they want to do with their betting activity. If I decide to self-exclude for 1 day, a week, a month, 6 months, depending on the circumstances, then I have the power to control my betting activities. Secondly, as regulators and operators, we must undertake public awareness and sensitization activities around the issues with problem gambling. This is something that we have to do on an everyday basis, depending on what platform we are using, because it is through this public awareness and sensitization that people become aware of the dangers of irresponsible gambling. So as the East African community, this should be part and parcel of our legal framework, condition, mandate, both the operators and of course us the regulators to ensure that we time and again undertake these public awareness campaigns that focus on educating the public around the dangers of gaming. The other way to promote responsible gaming is providing incentives to operators that focus on responsible gaming initiatives. And this can be focused on operators that embed responsible gaming metrics in their key performance indicators. So if we offer incentives to these operators, definitely it will be guaranteed that their focus will be on responsible gaming. When it comes to technology, we must leverage on technology and especially the emerging technologies. Especially the use of data analytics can help us identify early signs of addiction, and this will then trigger timely interventions in terms of providing support to people who could be problem gamblers. Definitely, we have to focus on identity management to prevent underage gambling. In Uganda, we have recently deployed what we call a National Central Electronic Monitoring System. And this is a system that interfaces with with operator systems. And one of the focus areas is to ensure that we prevent underage gaming. And how are we doing it? We are going ahead and interfacing with the national identity database to ensure that we monitor people who are registering on operator systems that are underage. In Uganda, the legal age for gambling is 25. So we must use technology in identity management to prevent underage gaming. We must also ensure compliance with the data protection laws because this builds trust and aligns with the international best practices. And this is an area that the legal fraternity should also interest itself in. Of course, it goes without saying that integration with the emerging technologies that like AI and blockchain technologies will definitely take us places in ensuring that we enhance transparency and protect the public against the adverse effects of gaming. So these three priorities share a common thread, and the thread is the ethical regulation is not a brake on growth. It is the very foundation of sustainable profitability. So we have to ensure that when consumers trust that the industry protects their welfare, then the market becomes more resilient. I want to conclude by saying that the industry's future depends on balancing economic opportunities with social responsibility. Ethical regulation and tech-driven solutions are definitely key to minimizing gaming harm. And a collective action is needed for us, regulators, operators, civil society in East Africa, to create a transparent and safe gaming industry in East Africa. And the major takeaways for me are: one, ethical regulation is not an obstacle to growth or profit. It is a foundation for sustainable profitability. Innovation and consumer protection can coexist when operators, regulators, and policymakers definitely collaborate. And technology-driven solutions can transform the region's gaming industry into a transparent, responsible, and resilient market. I want to take this opportunity to thank you once again, Philip and team, the East African Law Society, for inviting me to speak about responsible gaming. I know I have limited time, but I'm going to participate in your panel discussion. But I want to deeply thank you for, as the legal fraternity, picking an interest in this industry. This is an industry that sits at the intersection of law, technology, finance, and social responsibility, which creates both risks and opportunities for the lawyers in this region. And definitely it goes out without forgetting to mention that for those lawyers who definitely seek to invest in specialized knowledge, especially around gaming law, technology, compliance, especially with money laundering, will position themselves, and this industry can be a gold mine. But for those that treat it casually, can be caught in the legal and ethical traps, because this industry can also be a serious minefield for those that do not care about social responsibility. I want to thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and look forward to more engagements. Thank you so much. God bless all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis, and for such a brief but detailed presentation. Maybe one or two issues, Mr. Dennis. As you interest advocates into this space, I have just one or two questions. One, where is the right information in the process of doing due diligence? If you have a client who needs to start business in Uganda, I have over the past 1 month tried to get where to get the right information. And when you go on the internet, you find a lot of information about how to register a sports betting company, the fees involved, different fees, different blogs or websites provide different information. Where is the right information? Where do we get the right information to advise clients? Secondly, what are the incentives? You have talked about incentives to operators. What are the incentives that are there that you would ably inform someone who is interested in joining this business? Maybe you can give some light on that.
Thank you, Phil. If you want to invest in in Uganda, especially in sports betting or whatever license you need. All the required information is on our website. You can check our website. We've uploaded all the required information. And in the event that you feel you have not gotten what you need, we have contacts, we have a toll-free number, we have emails you can reach out, and we will be able to support. We have gone ahead to actually automate our processes, especially like the licensing process. It's online. Once you create an account into our licensing portal, you will definitely see all that is required for you to undertake this business. In terms of incentives, actually our focus has been on creating fast incentives for the locals. And in our sector, we define the locals as East Africans. When you look at the fees, for example, that we charge, we have differentiated fees for East Africans and then for the international players. So like I said, calling upon our East African countries to focus on incentivizing the operators, our focus is basically create local investors in this industry. Recently, Kenya gazetted a very interesting legal framework where the focus is to promote local participation in the gaming industry. And as Uganda, we are also in the process of amending our law to majorly focus on incentives that we offer to the players who are focused on responsible gaming, but also support the local investors in getting into this industry. Why do I say that? As Africans, we have sat back and become technology consumers instead of becoming technology innovators. And that is why in East Africa, this market is still dominated by foreigners. So I am glad that in Kenya, in Rwanda, now in Uganda, our focus is basically to create an incentive for the locals, but then also incentive for people who are focused on responsible gaming initiatives. I thank you, Philip.
Thank you once again. That has been so informative, and I believe I equally believe the right source of information is your website, and I'm thankful that the team, your legal team, is also helpful when you reach out to them. But be that as it may, you have broadly discussed the landscape, the need to regulate, the need to have responsible gaming, which I know that you're passionate about. At least every other event that I have had or been invited to where you are, at least you have made it clear. As we get into our panel discussion for members on call, as we get into our panel discussions, please send in the questions. We have the CEO himself, so send in the questions so that he can be able to address some of these questions. And we are going to have a panel discussion. We have seasoned practitioners. We want to know the interface, the interswitch between gambling and sports betting with the different sectors of the law, or the different arms of the law that we have. We have a discussion on legal and regulatory opportunities, which will be presented by Nancy Ouko of Ouko and Company Advocates. We have esports. We want to know, because much of the games, much of the betting is ideally is electronic. So we have the president of the East African Federation of the Esports Federation of Tanzania, Mr. Peter Mushkira. He's an advocate. He holds a master's in esports. So he will be taking us through risk management, dispute resolution in gaming and sports betting. We have George Okwaro Muturi from Mutuli and Monari Advocates LLP. He's the principal partner who will be shedding light on the opportunities for lawyers in this growing industry. He also holds a master's in international sports law, global sports law. So he is informed, he is ready to share with us. We will have Ivy Wangari Ndirangu, managing partner at Win Advocates, who will also be giving us the aspects of contracting, commercial transactions. You have a client. The CEO has told us, but as there is emphasis on the local operators, there's also foreign operators that come in. What are those key elements of the contract that you need to have with him that protect his interests and investment, and also provide opportunities for the players who are here locally? We have Sylvia Gathoni Wahome, who is a seasoned esports player. Those who follow esports, I think, should know about her. She's going to help us and understand the aspects of esports and the law. She'll be examining the intersection between competitive gaming and legal practice. As a legal practitioner, you're advising a gamer. In the esports language, they're called gamers. You're advising a gamer, IP-related issues, copyright, all elements. We shall have Sylvia Wahome taking us through that. I will start with George, who has a presentation for us on opportunities for lawyer. Before we get into the bigger discussion, let us understand, as lawyers who are on call, what opportunities are there for us. George, I'll invite you on call. I hope you're ready to share your screen so that members can...
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
And dig into the vast knowledge you're going to share with us.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, George, we can see it.
Yeah, can proceed. So, to begin with, you have to consider first that here in Africa, the betting industry has grown exponentially over the past decade, and we have to consider also the access to internet has grown exponentially, and we have experienced an unprecedented surge in online sports betting within East Africa as well, which emerges as one of the continent's most active markets. Once upon a time, sports betting used to be reserved for betting shops and kiosks. Now, just only one tap away, reshaping not just how fans engage with sports, but also how the industry operates. One of the key factors that has brought us to this particular point are as follows. As mentioned, the expanding mobile internet access, a youthful population that is buzzing sports games. Not only recently we were hosting CHAN here in East Africa, then quickly thereafter we were watching the World Cup qualifiers. And while the World Cup qualifiers is happening, we have the Premier League that has resumed. There is also tennis happening across the world. So many opportunities for the young population and other audiences who are sports enthusiasts to take into. As lawyers now, as our brother Dr. Dennis was mentioned, they have put more stricter regulations due to the technological disruption, thereby increasing investor interests and a lot of professionals being required to take part in also trying to advise them and improve that particular sector. So before we move to the opportunities, I want you to get to know your clients. So first and foremost, you look at, we have online and physical betting operators. This will include many of you, some of you are also made to be consumers. 1xBet, 22Bet, MozartBet, Cheza Cash, BetWinner. Look at casinos. There are several casinos along East Africa, Prime. For example, there is a Princess Casino in Dar es Salaam, Casino Simba in Uganda, Millionaires Casino, Golden Keys Casino, Las Vegas Casino. Moving forward, they are developers of the gaming software and devices. And my sister, Sylvia will remind us of the esports tournament organizers and gaming companies. There are various sports teams and leagues. An example is Kenya's Premier League being sponsored by SportPesa, a deal which was ratified by FKF late July, and are always investors and financiers, mostly from abroad, who come into this gaming sector. So begin with, we'll start with the licensing opportunities in licensing and regulatory compliance. So we'll look at their license applications, both local and cross-border. There are monetary legal changes which advocates must keep tabs with. There's always due diligence and investigation that needs to take place, especially when foreign investors come into the market. Compliance audits with the and then regulatory risk assessments. This will help clients, operators, affiliates, platforms obtain licenses under national laws. The advice from us as lawyers on cross-jurisdiction licensing if serving multiple East African countries. The monitoring of legal changes will help prepare clients adequately, and the due diligence for operators will be key in order to inform them of what is needed for them to comply before entering the market. We'll move on to the advertising and market and content rules. Here, there are various ad contents for compliance. In Kenya, various requirements are required. Secondly, you can look at you have to secure ad approvals. Thirdly, draft affiliate marketing agreements. And fourthly, monitor affiliate conduct. And lastly, defend against misleading ad claims. Here, counsel has to add advice on what the ad content is allowed, drafting compliant market material, to have to guide clients on approvals needed from agencies. In Kenya, we have the KFCB. There are similar operations across East Africa. And the draft affiliate agreements must comply with the local rules, and we have to monitor the affiliate market conduct. Now we look into the tech bit, the payments and fintech and crypto integration. Here, betting and gaming operators depend on payments a lot. Mobile money, here in Kenya, we have the M-Pesa, the cards, and the crypto. Regulatory issues include that may come up will include money laundering rules, foreign exchange, cross-border payments, fintech licensing, unregulated offshore sites exploiting gaps where the local legal framework hasn't provided any regulations. So here we seek to advise the fintech or payment integration, assist in the structuring operations to comply with the anti-money laundering, AML, and know your client for payment purposes. We have to advise on foreign exchange regulations, especially repatriation of revenues if foreign operators are involved. Also, we have to advise our clients regarding crypto-based betting platforms, crypto payments, ensuring compliance or pointing out risks. More so, we have to draft user terms, privacy policies, draft security policies where fintech gaming overlap. Data protection and cyber security, which is key in today's world, especially in the online space. Data is king. With this data, operators use this to manipulate or study their audiences and try and manipulate them to be more engaged with their products. So these platforms collect sensitive personal information such as identity, transaction history, sometimes biometrics, or other personal behavioral patterns, which to some degree, if you find out vulnerable persons, especially minors who are trapped in this cycle, they tend to be affected mostly. So the law comes into play where now we have to impose obligations and in order to avoid risk of data breaches or fraud. So we are tasked also to draft privacy policies, terms of service, data retention policies and deletion policies, help with cross-border data transfer compliance, incident response plans, cyber security risk assessments. Here we'll have to work with our IT professionals closely so that we can be able to redress any challenges or prevent any issue that may arise during these transactions. And in case of any disputes, we can move swiftly to court or we can sanction regulatory investigation, and if need be litigation if privacy or data breaches claims arise. With tax planning and structuring, they revolve around, as you can see, the operators, the international tax advice, structuring for tax compliance and representation in tax disputes. Here, the tax advice for gaming operators on revenue models, withholding. This will mean we look into with the withholding taxes, excise duties, structuring operations to optimize tax compliance and obligation. Since there is an influx of foreign gaming operators, we have to look to advise them on international tax and when multiple jurisdictions are involved, and in more or less tax dispute normally arises. So we have to defend these clients before the tax bodies. Also, we have to make sure that we find ways to report unlicensed or offshore operators so that we can protect the audiences that indulge in this particular activity. Corporate and commercial law, here more or less drafting, incorporating businesses, entities, or depending on which type of entities, it might be an LLP, it might be a company, but depending on the client and their needs, you'll have to do an assessment before coming to a conclusion, drafting and negotiating contracts, intellectual protection, property protection. This will include will be crucial. This will include the trademark registration, brand image rights, advice for sports teams, leagues, and individual athletes involved in sponsorship deals, and then also the data ownership used in the sports betting. When it comes down to ESG reporting and environmental, social, and governance, it's important so that the various companies that you engage in terms of advising have to comply, and also development of responsible gaming policies to protect the vulnerable in this particular space. Dispute resolution, we have already mentioned tax disputes, but more or less also disputes can land us before various regulators, which would mean that also license standoffs and commercial disputes may arise. So it's important through either prosecution or defending, you secure the interest of your clients. Advising and resolving disputes over payout issues, especially to the audience, and unfair terms, or blocked accounts for one reason or the other. And enforcement actions against illegal operators, especially those who are normally domiciled in offshore areas. Moving swiftly, in this industry, we'll encounter many challenges. We can start with the rapidly changing laws, just like under sports law. The laws change quite often because it's an evolving area. Interests become different as time goes by, and depending on also the technological complexities. So here we'll have new bills, changing taxation, new obligations around advertising. So lawyers must always stay current. Enforcement difficulties against offshore entities, because in this case there will be regulatory gaps existing in many of the countries in the East African region. So lawyers have to find ways to make sure that they report offshore entities that are operating illegally, or if there are any issues that involve their clients who have not been paid by these entities. Yeah. Regulatory gaps and weak enforcement. Even when laws exist, capacity to enforce, monitoring, audits, sanctions may be limited, which means advice may need to anticipate compliance even beyond written law. Market expectations and regulatory practice is a concern here, so we have to make sure that we stay in touch with those particular issues. We have reputational risk. Working with gaming and betting operators has social and reputational sensitivities. Problem with the gambling as a social harm, youth being exposed too early, and gambling addictions may arise. Lawyers need to advise on ethical as well as legal risks to the gaming operators, sorry. Cross-jurisdictional conflicts or complexities. Different East African countries have different laws. Digital services cross those borders, sometimes conflicting laws on taxation, licensing, and advertising. Also remember, there are foreign-based gaming operators who operate across all the countries in East Africa. So probably what the benefits they enjoy in Uganda might be different in what they enjoy in Rwanda or more or less in Kenya. There's also the consumer protection pressures. Regulators and civil society increasingly demand protection, fairness, and transparency and treatment of vulnerable populations. Now, how do we how do lawyers position themselves in this particular space? First and foremost, you have to develop a specialization in gaming on betting law. It's imperative that one has to acquire deep knowledge of the legal frameworks across the region, starting with your domicile country, know your regulatory bodies, know the case law in each of the regions, maybe also the comparative knowledge across other jurisdictions, particularly where iGaming is well regulated. Secondly, build relationship with regulators and standard setting bodies. Be known to Betting Control Licensing Board. At least today, I can say I have met Mr. Dennis Mudene Ngambirano. So that's one step closer to many of you within the board. So you can give him a thumbs up in the comment section. Stay technically literate, understand fintech, blockchain, if used, mobile money integration. Here you have to engage with IT professionals, business professionals, and know how online platforms work, payments, digital advertising, so legal advice is practical and implementable. 4, partner with consultants, tech and compliance firms. Many operators need not just legal advice, but tech compliance, anti-money laundering systems, advisory on marketing, UX, and also partnerships can allow offering a more holistic service. In this case, our clients are more keen on solutions and how best to survive in this particular market without finding themselves on the wrong end of the law. 5th, offer scalable and compliance tools and template solutions, as I have mentioned. For example, standard compliant contracts, advertising content review, templates for privacy policies, know your client, and anti-money laundering policy, etc., must be tailored to the local laws and also the regional and policies and the continental policies in play. 6th, engage in policy and public debate as we are doing today. A big thumbs up to all of you that are here with us today. Participating in public consultations, writing articles, giving talks helps position you as an expert. So regulators, industry refer clients to you. So congratulations to many of you. At least you've taken the first or second step to becoming an expert today. 7, geographical scope. Given cross-border nature of the of gaming, sports betting, and even esports, considering multiple East African jurisdictions will be beneficial. Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda. Can invite our brothers and sisters from DRC. Do you have brothers and sisters from South Sudan, Ethiopia? Perhaps looking at also the Indian Ocean islands, Mauritius, Seychelles, and Coast Africa, to broaden your scope of sphere of influence will greatly impact your practice. So thank you so much for reaching this particular part. My final takeaway your final takeaway from this particular engagement will be understand that money can buy you anything, but not immortality. That you have to earn. So in this particular business, you have to be undeniably good. So do the work, read, practice, collaborate, and do your very best. I wish you all the best. I am open to any questions. Back to you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, George. Thank you, George. We shall receive the questions from the members on call as they come in. At this particular moment, I think I'll invite Ivy Wangarai if she's ready to make her presentation on contracting commercial transactional considerations. The opportunities have been shared. So how do we contract? Which transactional considerations do we put in mind as we advise our clients and also advise both local and foreign players that may want to engage in this game? I am being deliberate on the nature of presentation. After IV, we shall have Nancy. Then we shall have two last panelists on esports. So, IV, if you're ready, please. Share with us.
Thank you so much, Bonacha, for this opportunity to share my knowledge regarding contracts. Let me allow me to share my screen. I hope you're able to share. So I will proceed. I hope I am audible.
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you very much. So I'll be discussing contracting, commercial and transactional consideration in gaming and sports betting. So I have separated my slides to how to draft the robust agreements with operators, investors, and technology providers. I will also take us through how as advocates we can protect intellectual rights in the betting space, and how else we can guide our clients to negotiate partnership and joint ventures. I will also address the challenges when drafting contracts and also compliance. So when we're dealing with operators, for instance, we have like sports pesa. We also have like betting. You need to ensure when you are drafting a contract with an operator, you need to ensure that they are compliant. So you need to ensure that they have a valid license with the BCLB. Another thing, you need to also ensure that the most you see, you have a contract. There are the basic clauses in a contract. That is, you first identify the parties, the role of the parties, their contribution in the contract. But I will be addressing the major or the unique clauses that you need to address when dealing with these particular parties. So for the operators, you need first to ensure, after identifying the parties and describing their roles in the contracts, you need to ensure that first they are compliant. You have to ensure that they have the BLC license. Another thing you need to ensure is put in the dispute resolution clause. So in the event there is a dispute, how are we going to resolve this issue? Is it through mediation? Is it through arbitration? Or are we going to approach the court? Another important thing about another important clause is the data protection clause. When you're dealing with betting, they are processing a lot of personal data regarding personal data. So you need to ensure there is a data protection clause that protects personal information so that it is not misused by the public or other entities. You also need to ensure there is an IPR clause So you need to have a clause that protects intellectual property rights for your client. This one prevents copycatting of the trademarks or the patents, or piracy, where another betting firm or company creates a trademark resembling another one. That one creates an element of mistrust in the betting industry. Another thing, an operator can decide to have a physical shop where people come and bet or play in a physical shop. As an operator, you need to guide the operator. He will have to enter into an agreement, a license, a leasing tenancy kind of agreement with a tenant. He will be the tenant, and then there will be the landlord as well. He will also have to employ people and staff who are going to run the business. So he will also have to have good employment contracts. Another thing, another clause, you need to ensure that, let's say he has to have a contract with a service provider, let's say Safaricom. Safaricom will give him a system where their system is integrated into M-Pesa, where the customer brings in money to the company, and where there are payouts from the company to the customer. So when you're dealing with a technology provider, most of these technology providers are from outside Kenya, for instance, the UK. So you need to ensure that first you have a confidentiality clause and the non-compete clause, that whatever system that they have created for you at the back end, that they do not share with other providers or other competitors, so that there is fair competition in the market. Secondly, you also need to, considering that most of these technology providers are from outside Kenya, you need to ensure, in case of a conflict, where the jurisdiction of how the conflict is going to be resolved, either in Kenya, either arbitration or mediation. Another thing I've noted about with these technology providers, we have what they have, an insertion order. So they have like a basic contract, but with the basic contract, they say terms and conditions apply. So you need to ensure when you're drafting a contract for your client that all the terms and conditions that are not written in the insertion order, they are well incorporated in the contract, so that in the event that they change the terms and conditions of their program, that anything that they change and is not part of the contract that you signed, then it is not usable or applicable in the contract. And then you also need to look at the duration of the agreement that you'll have with the technology provider. You do not want to take I would advise a client to take fewer years, maybe 1 year, as opposed to maybe a longer period of contract. In the event there's conflict, then you'll know how to advise your client, or rather prevent your client from making more losses, and the technology provider is not serving you the interest of your client. You also need to have a data protection clause, where in the event that personal data is being processed, you need to have a data protection clause. Where there is also, you can also have a profit sharing clause, where you decide how you're going to share the profit between the operator and the technology provider. You also need to ensure about the intellectual property rights. You need to clarify who owns what, and in the event of termination of the contract, that the owner retains their own intellectual property rights. And then at the time of termination of the agreement, you need to have clear terms on how to exit the contract. So the termination clause needs to be clear, and the process of handover of any data or any information is clear. When you're dealing with an investor, you need to identify the purpose and the scope of the joint venture. Either the investor is coming to bring product development or expansion. So you need to identify the scope and the purpose of the joint venture. You also need to have a profit and sharing clause. So there needs to be a fair distribution of the profits and the losses, and fair distribution of profits and loss based on the contribution of each party. if it is possible to make the investor be a director in the director shareholder in the company, then it will be easier to decide on how to share the profits and the loss. In the event it is impossible to have the investor become a director or a shareholder in the company, then the parties can decide on how to share the profit and the loss between themselves. So you also have to have a management structure. You need to, in the joint venture, you need to identify how decision making process is going to be governed, and how the leadership roles, what roles each director or shareholder is going to play. You also need to have a dispute resolution clause, how you are going to resolve conflicts in the agreement. Also, a termination clause is also important. In discussing how to protect intellectual property rights in the betting space, we do have trademarks, copyrights, patents, designs, and trade secrets. So when we are drafting a contract, you need to agree on what rights belong to which party. So you need to ensure that your client, in the event of a termination, that your client retains their property rights and ownership rights after the termination of the contract. In the event the service provider wants to continue using the intellectual property rights of your client, then that is when you capitalize on the talent, the IP of your client. You can have the service provider use the patent, but your client is making money. Also, another way that you can protect intellectual property rights, ensure that you register your client's trademarks, copyrights, or all the patents. So you ensure that all the property rights are registered with the required laws in your country. And then you can also establish a robust enforcement and rapid response. So you can have your advocates at call away in the event that they see an infringement of the trademark or copyrights. Then you can have your advocates write a letter to deceased, or also do approach court on litigation, or have maybe the website, the host, pull down the piracy or the copycats of the trademark or the IPR rights. Another thing, you also need to do a lot of civic education and engage your customers on the risk of copycatting of IPR rights, and as well as educate your customers or your consumers on the fraudulent sites, to identify sites that copycat. So how do we negotiate partnership and joint ventures ethically? Setting up betting farms in Kenya is expensive, especially even getting the licenses with the BCLB. So you can form a company, and then you define the objectives of the company. You'll have in form of a joint venture. So the parties can either contribute in terms of money or any other resource that is important in the joint venture. And then you will decide on the management structure, the process of decision-making process, and the leadership roles. You can also discuss on how you're going to share the profit and loss so that the business is running quite fairly. In the event of a dispute, you need to have a dispute resolution clause on how to resolve any conflicts that happens. Every event has a conclusion, so you also need to have ways on how to terminate that contract. So I will also addressing the challenges in contracts and compliance. You need to have a clause for data protection. So in terms of betting, sports betting, they involve a lot of data, personal collection of personal data. So as an operator, you are required to comply with the Data Protection Act, and also obtain a data controller certificate. You also need to have when drafting the contracts, add a data protection clause and how personal data is going to be processed and preserved in that company. There is also how to deal. There's another challenge in the betting, sports and betting. There's also the aspect of government moratorias and bans. For instance, the recent ban on 30-day ban on all gambling advertisements. So you need to know how in the event there is a ban from the government that is unforeseen, you can create a clause where you do a force majeure clause, where in the event there is a moratorium or a ban from the government, how do you renegotiate the terms of the contract with your client? You either you renegotiate the terms of the contract, or you can now terminate the contract. So always add a force majeure clause to preserve, or rather take care of the interest of your clients. Also, there is the element of taxation. The taxing, the government keeps on changing the tax terms and the excise duties that are supposed to be paid. So you need to have a compliance department where they monitor evolving tax laws so that your company or the operator is always compliant. So another thing is there is a lot of money laundering when it comes to betting. Sports betting. So betting firms are always on the government's radar that probably customers are using it for money laundering. So to prevent this kind of a thing, betting firms are needed to register with a financial reporting center to prevent money laundering activities and terrorism. You also need, as an operator, you need to conduct a regular KYC. So you need to run exercises to know your customers, ensure that the promotions that you do and the betting, that they do not reach minors, that the money that you're receiving as an operator does not come from money laundering. That will be all for my presentation. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my experience regarding contracts. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Ivy. It's very enriching. Maybe if I have a question, what is your best dispute resolution mechanism in sports betting and gambling contracts? What would you advise to be the best dispute resolution mechanism?
I would say that I would prefer to go to alternative dispute resolutions. In the event that the alternative dispute is not, do not come to a conclusion, then parties can proceed to court. But the best thing is alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, because it gives faster results. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful discussion. A few members thought you had a presentation which was not ably shared, but you did wonderful work presenting. As we move forward, I also wish to inform members on call that the East African Law Society Conference and AGM 2025 will be in Ethiopia. This time round, we will be celebrating 30 years. Make efforts to be there. And special about this year, the East African Sports Law Committee will be launching the East African Sports Law Summit. We have a call for sponsorships for as low as $500, but you can reach out to the Secretariat in case you are interested in having your name and networking opportunities. East Africa right now has over 80,000 members across East Africa, including Sudan, the Congo. Ethiopia is the latest member to join us. So between 26th to 29th of November, we shall be at the East African Skylight Hotel. But particularly for the Sports Law Committee, we will be launching the inaugural Sports Law Summit, East African Sports Law Summit, and we have a call for sponsorships. Going forward, I wish to introduce Sylvia Gathoni, Queen Arrow. Those of you who have your phones, you can Google her out, Queen Arrow. She's an esports player and content creator. I want her to share with us the more practical aspects before we get into the risks involved. So we can be able to understand the legal risk aspects after her presentation. Queen Arrow, if you're on call, please.
Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. So for those who don't know me, my name is Sylvia Gathoni. I go by the name Queen Arrow, which is my gamer tag. I'm an esports athlete based here in Kenya. So I'm going to be taking you through esports and the law, which is going to be diving into the intersection between competitive gaming and legal practice. So just give me a second. I set up so I can share my screen. Okay. Do let me know if you can see my presentation as it is. So I'm going to be taking you through the esports and the law, the intersection of competitive gaming and legal practice. So to give an introduction, so esports is a short form for electronic sports, which is organized competitive gaming. So just like traditional sports, we have players who can compete individually depending on the game or in teams. But instead of a football pitch or a basketball court, this happens within a video game or the digital arena. So the best way to kind of think of esports is like chess or Formula One, but it's online and it requires strategy, reflexes, teamwork, and mental stamina. And just like traditional sports, it's organized into leagues and there's prize pools and there's sponsorships/partnerships, and we have professional players. And to give you a context of how big esports is, the numbers are in 2021, the revenues surpassed $1 billion US. And we have an example of the viewership where the League of Legends World Championships drew 100 million viewers, which is more than the Super Bowl, which is played in the United States of that year. And then we have the prize pools can go as far as millions of dollars. Like to give an example, the Fortnite World Cup in 2019 paid $3 million US to the winner. And I know a lot of people would think of esports as just a bunch of kids playing video games in their mom's basement or in their living rooms. But in 2025, it's become more than that. So we have so many different stakeholders in esports with players, teams, and sponsors that cover the globe. But when it comes to the issue, when you comes to this issue, the money and visibility have grown, but the legal questions have also grown because this has become kind of the wild west. So the legal aspect is kind of playing catch up to the money and the prize pools and the different stakeholders that are partaking in this industry. So in Kenya, we have esports, in Kenya, we have esports still being a young industry with grassroots tournaments being commonplace in different games like FIFA, Mortal Kombat, Tekken, PUBG, and Call of Duty. But with the right kinds of structures in place, with the kind of rate of structures in place, we're going to have esports becoming a powerhouse in this country and in this region. So the intersection of gaming and the law is we're going to have different categories of player rights, sponsorship, and governance. So I'm going to be going through these different aspects one by one. So when it comes to the player rights, we have players that are signing many contracts, but they don't have independent legal advice because either of the cost or because of the issue of a lack of knowledge. So this ends up locking players into very unfair contract terms due to that kind of information asymmetry regarding the prize money, their streaming obligations, or their image rights. And so this is where the law needs to come in to ensure that these agreements are transparent and balanced, and especially in favor of the player, but also to ensure that there's going to be some synergies explored between the player and the person who's contracting them. So to give an example, we have the case of FaZe Clan versus Tfue, where he sued his organization FaZe Clan for saying that, because he felt that his organization was taking 80% of his earnings from branded content, which this kind of created this discussion regarding the kinds of contracts that players are signing. Then there's also another issue where esports athletes are not really considered employees under the law because it's easier for organizations to have them be independent contractors rather than employees, because it now brings in the issue of whether they should be paid healthcare, minimum wage, and other benefits that are normally afforded to employees under the law. But you find that in the United Kingdom, some esports athletes have started pushing for esports to be considered a form of employment. There's something also didn't add into my slide. Also, when it comes to the issue of players competing in different countries, since esports isn't fully recognized as a sport, it's also been difficult for players to get the right kinds of visas for them to compete in the countries they're competing in. Then there's also the issue of health and welfare, because they're also not considered really employees under the law. So it also means there's the issue of them being exploited because of long training hours. And then it also means that they're not really paid healthcare benefits. So we have the example of South Korea, where pro gaming houses have started facing backlash for the long hours that players compete under. Then we come to the topic of sponsorships. This is where sponsorship deals are what keep the esports industry running. But we have this issue where there's due to stuff like non-disclosure agreements, these deals aren't really available in the public realm. So it kind of makes it difficult for us to understand the kind of expectations, the deliverables, and the revenue splits that these deals have. That these deals have. So we have an example of a famous esports athlete, Tyler Blevins, had to disclose that he had been paid $1 million to promote the game Apex Legends. And this disclosure was kind of necessary under the United States federal law because of hidden paid promotions tend to breach advertising laws under the Federal Trade Commission. Then there's some contracts usually have morality clauses to protect their brand in case a player behaves poorly and brings disrepute to their teams and to the brands that they're representing. So, for example, there's a controversy where some partners withdrew from the agreement with EchoFox, which was an esports organization, which has since then shut down because one of their team members made racist remarks to which kind of forced them to withdraw from their agreement. Then there's also the issue of conflict of interest, or maybe which comes first, whether is it the team sponsors or the individual sponsors. So if, let's say, a player is in partnership with a brand like Adidas, but the team is with Nike, whose contract will have to take priority? So that's kind of self-explanatory in this instance. Then there's also the issue of governance, because esports doesn't really have doesn't have one global federation. This kind of creates issues. Esports is mostly driven by the publishers of the different games. So each publisher maybe has their own rules regarding the competitive aspects of the game. So, and this kind of creates issues like in terms of maybe dispute resolution. It also creates in case of, let's say, a player maybe who hasn't been treated fairly, or a team that hasn't been treated fairly. So where will these disputes be resolved? This has also made things like organizing the Olympic esports games very difficult, because the needs of the publishers and the needs of the federations will more often than not clash. So, for example, the Overwatch League has its own rules. So Blizzard, which is the publisher of the game Overwatch, will dictate how the competitive aspect of the game is going to go. But CS:GO which is Counter-Strike, the rules are set by the independent tournament organizers. So this kind of creates this whole governance fragmentation. And then also this kind of ties back into the first point I raised about dispute resolution. And I find that traditional courts don't have the framework to address esports disputes that may rise up in different jurisdictions, because the way maybe Kenya interprets its law is not how the United States is going to have its own interpretation of the law. And sometimes publishers may demand contractually that if, let's say, a player here in Kenya has an issue that needs to be addressed, that they might have to address their legal concerns where the publisher is domiciled. So, for example, like for Electronic Arts, being based in the United States, they might demand that whatever disputes arise from the game be addressed in the United States. And then there's the issue of, So now to bring it to the Kenyan and African context, we find that esports governance is still kind of starting up. So we don't have any esports specific regulations, meaning that we kind of have to use the laws that are available to us under the constitution or under maybe general commercial and contract law. So this kind of creates a challenge because of this raises maybe the issue of rogue tournament organizers or rogue esports teams playing fast and loose with the law. But at the same time, it also creates an opportunity for us to create frameworks that prioritize integrity, inclusivity, and the protection of players, meaning that you don't really have to make the mistakes that the United States or Europe or Asia have made. So in conclusion, we find that esports is not just a legal vacuum, but it's an evolving industry, which gives us the opportunity to create laws that adapt to the times and protect players, sport partners, and establish the fair governance. And if we get this right, we might actually find that the rest of the world is looking to this continent for how to best create the right esports governance structures. Thank you.
Interesting presentation. Thank you, Queen Arrow. For members on call, Queen Arrow is an advocate, just like many members that are on call. She's a decorated esports gamer and champion in several series. I think the only game that she has played that I've also played is Super Mario, but she's a champion in her own way, and she has had a very good path if you are making research on esports, you cannot miss her name. She has hinted on very key issues which can open the discussion for the next panel discussant, Peter Mashikira. Peter Mashikira is president of the Esports Federation of Tanzania. And from the last slides of Queen Arrow, there is less regulatory compliance or regulations in esports in East Africa. Peter Mashikira is one person that has moved from TZ to Kampala here. We have moved with him on streets to meet the several players to see that we have something in line with esports regulations. I know he has done that in Kenya. He's so passionate about this area. Peter Mashikira will take us through risk management. Queen Arrow has said most of these gamers are not considered employees, yet someone wants to contract with them. Someone wants to have a share of their earnings. This is content that most of them create. What are the risks involvement? What is risk involved, and what risk management measures do we have in place? In case of dispute resolution in gaming, what happens? People have issues. Where do they go right now that we have no clear regulations in esports? Peter Mashikira will lead us into that discussion in the next few minutes as we get into the winding up comments from all the presenters that we've had today.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Peter, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Philip. And it is a pleasure for having me once again. Basically, I'm indebted because I know George has spoken about risk in terms of arbitration and dispute resolution management. But what has Sylvia uttered in our presentation, maybe what I can just speak in a nutshell, because there are two topics now. We have gaming and we have esport. So if I start with esport, basically we don't have a specific legal framework which is dedicated to esport in terms of dispute resolution. And of recent, that is a new development. I'm in the team of arbitrators. As you understand, I've been appointed as a Court of Arbitration for Sports arbitrator. And we are now working with a team. Basically, it is headquartered in Germany, to come up now with guidelines and regulations that will fit in dispute resolution. But the risk or the challenge is now, as what Sylvia has pointed out, with esport, what is controlled or what is regulated, it depends on the publisher, these game publishers. Now, in a short form, we do understand that is also a challenge that people will need now to consent. Now, the opportunities or the gap which we lawyers we need to fill now is to have now a robust legal framework or drafting a well-drafted arbitration clause through the contract, especially whenever there are tournaments or leagues. And within that clause, one now has to specify whether, in the case of dispute, this is a platform or this is a folder where we shall refer our matters for dispute resolution. So because of the consent, now that becomes the issue. But also looking now at the setups within East Africa and Africa in general, we have also issues where it is when it comes to enforcement of these arbitral awards. Sometimes our local courts are a bit slow or reluctant to enforce, and when it happens where there are procedural issues. But also, as you understand, cost is also a problem or a risk in most cases. Some cannot afford, and I was just pointing out that we have a working team which is now working now to bring a player to file a case, basically in the US or in German. You need to have an arbitrator, and the arbitrator needs to be paid. So it's a bit tricky in terms of cost. So that is only on the esport part. Thing that Sylvia has pointed out the difference on the contents of esport, as she has mentioned that this is video gaming in organized activity, whether it's a league or tournament. Now coming now, because also in both gaming, that is my specialization, esport and the gaming. And maybe I can point out a little bit. I know there are some, my Kenyan's colleague, George, Eve, of recent, Kenya has enacted a new law which has replaced the old law called the Gambling Control Act. And the good thing within that law, it introduces the gambling authority, the gambling regulatory authority, but of interest, it also introduced the Gambling Appeal Tribunal. And basically within the law, the tribunal will hear or will receive appeals which are ranging from transaction outcome and licensing decision from the county government and the government at large. And within the new law, which now codifies, it codifies what we call restriction on gambling advertisement, and it goes further to ban endorsement of celebrity in gambling endorsement advertisement. Now the risk or the gap is, as you understand, most of these companies, especially betting companies, they cut across different jurisdictions. And if you can recall, we have BetPower, which is in Tanzania, is in Kenya, and Uganda. And to them, because you have BetPower Kenya, you have BetPower Uganda, you have BetPower Tanzania, and the issue of endorsement to celebrity is also debatable, because as you know now, we have Ambassador Thierry Henry, and Thierry Henry has been a famous player, is a legend, and through the advertisement, now the attraction of young generation to indulge themselves into gaming is, the visibility is too high. So that is also debatable, and there's also a risk or a gap between the law. But again, the law formalized, which is also the practice in both countries. I think the CEO Gambling Authority of Uganda pointed out, the new law in Kenya now formalize what we call electronic monitoring system, which for Kenya and the same to Tanzania is connected to Revenue Authority with to ensure the track of revenue, but also to ensure compliance. And it also have issues of regulatory stability. As we understand, most of these licenses, for instance, in Tanzania, the license are provided annual, but in Kenya, it has now come with a provision where the license will be provided in a term of 3 years, which enhances now regulatory stability, but also reduce administrative burdens. And again, it also enhance or operators stability in terms of planning their long-term investment. So that is what I wanted to cover, but also there is also a risk in terms of regulatory changes. We do understand the gaming, the gaming industry has always been exposed to a lot of taxation and regulatory overlapping. And now the challenge is on the sudden change of tax laws. And I remember I happened to be one of the panelists during the Gaming Africa conference in Kenya, and I was discussing on the issue of taxation. You can see a lot of taxes embedded to gambling operators. And whenever there are sudden changes, and there is a very good famous case in Kenya where the gaming operators they had a case with Kenyan Revenue Authority, and the issue was the sudden change of tax regime. But also there is an issue of reputation risk in terms of now the public opinion. We do understand out of this industry, we have civil societies who are always not friendly to the evolving of the industry. So that is also a risk. But as you understand, these companies, these operators cut across different jurisdictions. Now, for our case in East Africa, we do not have harmonized tax regime or legal framework that cut across different jurisdictions. And this is also one of the challenges, but also one of the risks in terms of dispute. Thank God that Kenya has, because the CEO is also in the loop. I'm sure the good thing about the new Kenya Gambling Control Act with the issue of dispute resolution or the introduction of gambling appeal tribunal maybe will now replicate to East African countries. And I'm sure, because this is an evolving industries, they will come, and the OTA's CEO reiterated that they are now amending the law. I'm sure that will also be taken into consideration. So that in a nutshell, maybe I will get some question. I've seen some colleague from Tanzania with some question, then I can maybe take my time to respond to them. Thank you very much, Philip, for having me.
Thank you very much. I realize we've been holding the CEO here for the last 2 hours. I don't know if he's still on call. Mr. Dennis, are you on call?
Yes, I'm still here, Phil.
Yes, I wish to let you go, CEO, to serve the nation. But just one question. Do you think is the Uganda right now is the right environment to invest in?
Without a doubt, it is the right destination to invest in. And like I earlier said, I want to call upon the East Africans, especially, who we regard as the locals, to do invest in the sector so that we partake in this industry that we believe in Africa is largely dominated by foreigners, because we have all it takes to actually invest in this sector as East Africans. I thank you.
Thank you. We have a few questions and a few comments. I've seen a comment from international journalist Leon Senyange, work that is needed to do in esports regulation. I think we've tried to travel this path with him. I also see a comment from Rosenfield, who is from Gambia, saying, as I know the Association of Gaming Regulations in Africa is going to unify licensing taxation policies for Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. Could it lead to gambling taxes and licenses? It's actually a question, I think, which Mr. Dennis can help us address. Could the harmonization of gaming laws in East Africa lead to licenses and fees reduction in Uganda, where taxes and fees are the highest? And when could this be? There's a concern that Uganda has the highest tax regime. Mr. Dennis, could you please address this before you take
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. One thing I need to collect, it's not Uganda that has the highest taxes and fees in the East African region. I think now Rwanda should be the highest, where I think tax is about 40% of the GGR and 25% of the withholding tax. And yes, I am aware of the Association of Gaming Regulators in Africa, an initiative that is driven by the Kenya, and we are participating, and we are in the initial stages of formalizing. And I can say yes, with unifying our licensing and taxation policies, then I see us taking the right direction as far as this gaming industry is concerned in East Africa.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. I think you can take leave. If you have any parting shots to the members who are here.
Thank you so much, Philip, and all the legal fraternity. I once again say thank you for picking an interest in this industry. It's an industry that clearly needs you, the legal minds, to get involved and partake in the opportunities. But also, as you do that, please, I beg that you become responsible gaming ambassadors, because irresponsible gambling affects each one of us at a family level, at a workplace level, and in our social circles. Please, as you preach the responsible gaming message, tell people that betting is addictive and can be psychologically harmful. Bet with what you can afford to lose, and ensure to leverage on the responsible gaming tools by self-excluding if you think you are losing it, by setting time limits, and by also setting deposit limits on your betting wallets. Phil, to just tell you that actually we've done a study and we've discovered, like in Uganda, 93% of the gambling is happening online. That shows you where the market is headed. Two, over 50% of the gamblers are actually the employed. So Philip, that is me and you and all the corporates that are on this platform. And three, 99% of the gamblers are men. That clearly also points you where most of the activity is taking place. So I thank you once again and wish you good deliberations and always at call to support and ensure that we build a transparent and fair gaming industry in East Africa. Thank you. God bless all of you.
Thank you. We have a few questions that are divided between esports and esports and dispute resolution. I think if Peter is ready, he can attempt the questions on esports, but there are also questions directed to Queen Arrow. People need to understand more of of the industry, what is in it. So you can look through the charts and the Q&A so we can address these issues. Sylvia also has a question. So let's try to have an interactive session. I've seen a few hands. I don't know if members are still interested. I've seen a few hands from Edna. You can please unmute and ask your question before the panelists attempt to answer. We have also a special request from Nancy Ouko, who wishes to say something. She was one of our panelists, but she had challenges with her gadget, but she's trying to come through. Please, Nancy. Nancy, if you can connect through the phone, please say a word.
Philip, would it
All
be
right,
okay if
Nancy.
I answered the...
Yeah, please, Sylvia. And Nancy seems to have challenges.
I'd like to answer the two questions that I've seen raised towards me in the chat. So I've seen the first questions that you mentioned that there are issues of dispute resolution and lack of uniformity across the federations. How is the International Esports Federation based in Busan, South Korea involved? So I'd like to answer that question. So the IESF, based in South Korea, is one of the strongest attempts at building a global esports governing body. And they have over 100 nations and they run the World Esports Championships and even have integrity and arbitration frameworks. But the issue is this: they don't actually control the games, and the real power still lies with the publishers. And they don't always see eye to eye with federations or publishers and the grassroots organizers, which is why we don't have a single global dispute resolution system whose decisions are binding across the board. So in practice, we find that these disputes have to end up being addressed at the local courts or at the arbitration panels in the jurisdictions where these issues have come up. So while the IESF is laying the groundwork, we're still in the fragmented phase until there's real alignment between publishers, federations, and tournament organizers. And another thing I'd also like to add, we have the IESF that's purporting to speak for the whole world, and then we also have the Global Esports Federation. So that also brings up the issue that we have two federations that are claiming to speak for the entire world on matters to do with esports. So that's why it's also very difficult for their decisions to be bindings, because who are we going to follow at the end of the day? But as far as I'm aware, that's something that's currently being addressed, and hopefully by the time the Olympic esports games in Saudi Arabia come up in 2027, we'll actually have one unified global federation for esports. And for the second question that I've seen being asked, how we can bring esports sponsors to Kenya and how big East Africa's esports industry is. So to answer the first question is how we can bring in esports sponsors is that we have the issue or the challenge of perception, where many sponsors still see esports as a hobby rather than a professional industry. And part of changing that is, first of all, we need to create concerted grassroots tournaments and actually allow people to actually see gaming and esports as an avenue through which they can participate in. And to also change that perception, we need to actually have concrete data that shows reliable viewership and participation statistics that show that a return on investment is possible for the partners or the sponsors. Then we also need to create professional structures where contracts, event management, and player representation that will make brands feel safe investing. And we also need to create localization where esports needs to be packaged as part of the African youth culture and are not just aping Western models. Then the second question is how big East Africa's esports industry is. We're still in our infancy compared to South Africa, Nigeria, or North Africa, like Morocco, Egypt, and the like. And we don't have billion-dollar figures, and that's not really a problem because it means that the market is wide open. So to give more context, I think Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania have some of the highest internet and mobile penetration rates in Africa. And mobile gaming in Kenya alone makes up a huge share of the entertainment spending because mobile phones are more accessible to young people as compared to consoles and PCs. So, and then it also helps that you have local grassroots tournaments in FIFA, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, Call of Duty, PUBG, and these are pulling in hundreds of players. So we may not yet measure esports economies in the billions. The potential is there. We have a large number. We have the largest youth demographics, and that's exactly what our esports industry thrives on. So yeah, those are my answers for the questions that I was asked.
All right, thank you, Sylvia. I don't know if Peter is ready. He also had quite a number of questions. Some touching the Tanzanian Football Federation. So please come in.
Yeah, maybe I can just quickly respond to the question. Yes, I do understand Tanzania Football Federation had advertised not sponsorship, but collaboration in terms of engagement with the gaming companies, and basically it is on the ads, and the valuation is based on the number of streamers. We do understand we have broadcasting rights, and we have Azam who are now in the agreement with Tanzania Football Federation. So the the ads with the gaming companies is valued on the number of streamers. That is what I wanted to make it clear to, I think it is Eleanor Ngalo. That was the question. Now I was looking the second question. I don't think if I have maybe with Sylvia I think he has firmly answered what I also wanted to say, but in a nutshell, the problem we are facing, and especially in East African market, is the question of data. We don't have data, and sometimes it is also a challenge to bring in investors. But what he has pointed out with the internet penetration, and we do understand, for instance, in Tanzania, we have optic fiber. Mobile penetration is too huge, and that I think should be our main focus, because actually participating in games, having console is typically cost, and most of our people can't afford. So the opportunity which we have, and this is what we are now developing. In fact, in Kenya, we have we are working with Play On, which is Lubix, for mobile gamification, and we are also working with Botswana for mobile games. So, and I think that it should be the focus as of now, given now the demographic number of youth across East Africa. And actually, what I can say, the number is always big. The problem is, as what I've said, we don't have customized data to appreciate or to showcasing that we have potential in East Africa. Then I don't think if I would have another question. I think there was an issue of I don't think there is another question unless it comes. But I think that is what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. On call, we have a very senior member of the legal fraternity in East Africa, Senior Counsel John Ohaga. I don't know if he can say a word more so on dispute resolution in esports. He is chair of the Kenya Sports Tribunal. He has always offered wise counsel. I don't know if he's on call to give us an industry as big as Sylvia's described it, lack proper regulation. We've heard from the presentation of Dennis that responsible gaming, they are preaching responsible gaming because they see the effect. Now imagine you are to suffer such effect of addictive gaming, but then there is no regulation to in space like esports. Senior Counsel John Ohaga, you could say a word.
Philip, I was hoping to just stay quiet and listen. Can you hear me?
I can never let you keep quiet, Senior Counsel.
I was trying my best to just listen, but let me clarify that my term as the chairman of the Sports Tribunal ended in November of 2024, so I'm no longer the chairman. But having said that, soon after my term ended, the minister responsible for sports appointed me to chair a task force whose mandate is to review Kenya's sports policy, Kenya's sports legislation, and Kenya's sports infrastructure. And I have to say that I've listened with great interest to this conversation because obviously esports is an emerging area, and any legislation or sports policy that does not take into consideration emerging areas would definitely fall short of the expectations of our sports ecosystem. We're trying to produce a world-class sports policy and sports legislation to drive Kenya sports forward. And so I was very interested in all the views expressed, in understanding where the gaps are, and in trying to formulate solutions for those gaps. The reality is that with goodwill, there must be some basic standards that everybody agrees we can conform to, we can abide by, and is healthy for the growth of sports. Dispute resolution is definitely at the core of any sporting endeavor, because in any endeavor, especially as competitive as sports, there will always be some dispute or the other. But sports calls on us to resolve these disputes in a healthy environment. And so I think that perhaps it behoves us as frontier advocates in the area of esports to begin to exchange ideas and to formulate regulations that we think would guide our respective federations, and which can be adopted, and which can then move on to the global stage. Sports is global, and therefore, obviously, there must be some guidance that comes from an umbrella body. But Philip, I have no solutions right now. I do not want to preempt the work of the task force. I can only say that these are things we take very seriously and that I'm very, very interested in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senior. At least from your brief discussion, we now know where to table our concerns. Sylvia is on call, Peter is on call. There are people who are passionate about regulating the esports space. They now know that there's an ongoing process and work to review the policies and laws of Kenyan sports. Maybe we can start from there, and it can be the masterpiece for all East African countries. Thank you. Yeah, I still see two hands up, Edna and Abdul. I don't know if you're still on call, but I also realize we have presence of Juliet Kavaruganda, and members of the East African Sports Law Committee like Peter Momo. I see on call Francis Kimera and so many other advocates. I continue to remind you that between 26th and 29th we shall be in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is the newest member of the East African Law Society, and it's hosting us. We shall be celebrating 30 years in existence as ELS. But above all, the Sports Law Committee will be launching the inaugural East African Sports Law Summit. We invite sponsors. The East African Law Society Secretariat will be reaching out to so many people. We need sponsorships for this wonderful summit. The sports law discussion has been on at least for the last 3 years. We have 3 or 4 years we have been consistent in our discussions and enriching our region. I know so many people that have been inspired. On call, I can ably say without contradiction that Leon Senyange is one of the members who he was previously a sportsman in motorsport, then a journalist. But when we had a discussion, he was like, Philip, I have to go back to study law with keen interest in sports law, and he's taking good strides. So that is the way to go. I am thankful of seniors like Senior Counsel Ohaga, who have always shared with us knowledge in everything. You just text them and they are on call. I thank the East African Law Society Secretariat, the CEO, David Sigano. He has always encouraged that the membership is involved in organizing such talks and sessions. We have a very wide calendar of activities that we shall be sharing with members specifically for sports law, because we want to build and drive this discussion home. We want to have a big fraternity. Senior himself, as you have seen, upon stepping down as chairman, he now has another task. So we still need players in this field. I believe that the bigger we are, the better it shall be for the sports legal practice environment in East Africa. At this moment, I wish to really take the opportunity to call off the meeting. I will encourage. I'll make sure I'll make sure we see Sylvia or Queen Arrow as the East African Sports Law Summit in Ethiopia. I'll talk to the East African Secretariat to see that we host. She's an advocate, she's a gamer, she is a decorated international athlete in the esports fraternity. So she could be an inspiration to many of us who could have these ideas but sit back on them. I don't know if we have any word from Gabriel Achaye, any parting shots?
Yeah, thank you so much, Phil.
But on my side,
yeah, thank you, Phil. Sadly, thank you, our esteemed panelists. Like you have rightly noted, Queen Arrow, quite an inspiration, and it would be really an honor to have her at the inaugural Sports Law Summit happening at the annual law conference in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. If you've not yet registered, please visit our conference website at events@ELawSociety.org. Registration is still ongoing. Our early bird fee is still ongoing, so you don't want to miss that chance to register in this month of September and be a part of a very wonderful journey of celebration of a Pearl Jubilee of the regional bar. Otherwise, from us at the East Africa Law Society, we would like to thank you for your constant support. To you, our esteemed panelists, thank you so much for making this happen. This only happened due to your generosity and to your participation. To you, our esteemed participants, it's really good to have you. Let's keep engaging. This week on Thursday, if you're interested in regional practice and you're wondering how to file petitions at the East Africa Court of Justice, what procedures are involved there too, how do you draft your pleadings, how do you identify cause matters, we have a webinar just for you. It's happening this Thursday, so you want to register for that and not miss out on that very important webinar session. Also, if you're interested in mastering law firm practice, we have a training that is coming up in the month of October. You want to keep tabs for that information. Otherwise, from us to you, wish you a very lovely afternoon and stay blessed until we meet again. Very lovely afternoon. Goodbye.